if you don't think Victory Mondays and those feel-good feelings carry over to Tuesday, you're wrong, because they do. Welcome in to the Bold Bald Breakdown, Week 16 of the Bold Bald Breakdown. We're still not tired of each other, as far as we know.
I don't think we ever will be.
No.
I mean, we don't live together. That would be a different story.
Yeah, that would be an entirely
I don't know what your
different story.
dishwashing habits are like, but if they aren't tip-top, then you're on my naughty list.
Yeah,
holidays.
One thing that I'm all about, I had college roommates that didn't understand I wouldn't mind dishes in the sink necessarily, but like, don't leave them on the counter. Let it hurt. Like, if have it be doing something.
You're spoken like somebody who didn't have roommates who left dishes in the sink so long that mold started to grow on and around them, which I did. Let's just say
mold?
You haven't lived until you've taken a gallon of bleach and just dumped it in a sink. That right there.
We might have to devote a segment to roommate stories at some point.
Can't read, can't write, can't do the dishes.
All righty, welcome in again. Week 16 of the Bold Ball Breakdown. I'm Mike Chico Borman. He is Nick Shook, NFL.com and NFL Network. Michael Bohm producing, and wow, we are feeling good. Browns. For a while, it didn't look too good. Browns pull it out 20-17. They're now 9-5 and knocking on the door, and that knock is also preventative measures, so we can, hopefully not have any bad luck.
Is that searching for like a sign of life?
Yeah, not really. It's just they're knocking on the door, but they're also like, I'm knocking, so I don't jinx anything.
I'm knocking to make sure that this isn't hollow. You know what I mean? Because that's, considering all the injuries the Browns.
This is fine mahogany, son.
This is top tier.
What's wrong with you?
This is butcher's block right here. I don't know if the Browns are, but they find a way to get it done.
They do, and they have all season long, and now, amazingly enough, 9-5. Look, I'll be the first one to say, Nick, when it was 17-7, I just kind of thought it's going to be one of those days, and they happen. We've been lamenting the injuries. We've been talking about all of the different injuries, and then, another one, Joel Bitonio goes to the sideline early in this game, or actually very early in this game, because during warmups is when the back flared up on him. And you're just thinking, you know what? They have been incredible to this point, dealing with these injuries, but eventually it's gotta burn you. And while Chicago has not had a great year, hey, they're playing good football. Montez Sweat, more on him in a moment, and that defense are certainly coming together. This just isn't going to be their day until Joe Flacco, who wasn't great through three quarters, and you've got actually possibly my favorite number that matters.
I thought you'd like that.
Yes, you know exactly what I'm talking. We're on the same page, brother. Same page. You're my boy, Blue.
It's a bald guy thing.
One of my favorite numbers that matter, which we'll get to later, but Joe Flacco then all of a sudden comes alive in the fourth quarter when you need him to, and the Browns just find a way to win, and they knock off the Bears 20-17 to move to 9-5. But Nick, when it was 17-7 and the rain was coming down and the wind was howling, did you just think probably just not their day?
Yeah, there were multiple points in that game, especially at the start of the fourth quarter. I got a text from a group of buddies, and they were like, "We need a score here," and I was like, "It's not going to happen, folks. Like, they are not proving to me that they are able to move the football. Really, they couldn't protect well enough." And the thing is like, if you look at the Browns and you look at the Browns in that instance Sunday, they have every reason in the world to not be here. I mean, you looked at their offensive line. You had backup left tackle, backup left guard. You were on your third center at one point. Luke Whippler had to come in and play briefly because they lost Nick Harris before he was able to come back. Starting right guard, third right tackle. Okay?
Third. Not one, not two. Third.
4 of your 5 linemen were not starters. A few of them were third stringers, and the problem's extended to the defensive side of the ball as well.
Third right tackle, third center, you said?
Yes. Because it goes Posick, Harris, Whippler. Whippler was in. You had your third right tackle in.
Third. Yeah.
Because I think Hudson was out at one point, or ended up being in there. I mean, because you had DeJuan Jones is your second, Conklin's your first, so Hudson's your third. You had the only guy that's been able to be out there consistently is your best offensive lineman, arguably, Wyatt Teller, who got dinged for a holding call in a moment where I was like, what is going on? Then they changed, they corrected it, and it was actually on left tackle, Jerron Christian. But they should not be where they are right now. They should not have been in position to win that game. They had no life offensively. Joe Flacco threw 3 picks, which, by the way, real quick, one was his fault. And it was a miscommunication on what was basically an RPO where he had one read to make and he made the wrong read. He threw the wrong spot because the other one was knocked out of Cedric Tillman's hands. Understandable. He probably could have put in a slightly better spot, but that's not on him. And then the third pick, you could say he hesitated, but, I mean, you look at that replay from not even the All-22, but from the wire camera, the sky cam, Njoku's open. It's just the fact that he basically made Tyreek Stevenson made a fantastic play to cover that ground and then dive and make the interception. So I'm not going to pin that on Joe Flacco. I would say one of the 3 interceptions was his fault, but it doesn't matter because we don't have earned and unearned interceptions in this game yet.
That's
I am pushing. We will fight the good fight.
And you're on the board of Next Gen Stats, are you not?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I think I'd probably be.
I'd campaign.
Probably make more money.
I'd wear a button.
But I will say that if you did have those statistics like Fun with Dick and Jane, Jim Carrey, good movie. I don't know the statistics that you're referring to.
Amazing how much we can laugh after a win.
Yeah,
it really is.
If you look at the statistics, it's not really a fair representation. But passer rating is so affected unfairly by interceptions that his passer rating was terrible going into the fourth quarter. There was no reason for them to be in that situation where they were able to suddenly move the ball down the field, and yet they did. They did. My brother-in-law was at the house. I had the whole family over, both sides. House is packed. They win. Everyone's leaving all jubilant, and he gives me a hug goodbye, and he goes, Cardiac Kids 2.0. They just keep finding ways to get it done. And I'm like, we'll see you next week.
Yeah, and by the way, Fox with these it was Cardiac Kids with a K. If you're gonna use that graphic, you got to use the right one. And for God's sake, and I'm really not, I'm not that guy that complains about announcers.
I am.
I'm usually
not about
the guy that, like, everybody.
Nerds.
Oh, I don't like Joe Buck. I don't like Chris Collinsworth. I don't like.
People in this town hate Mark Sanchez.
Yeah, but Mark Sanchez. How many you've done Browns? You've done 4 of them, I think. It's not Cora Mora.
Well,
from Bora Bora, it's Cora Moa. I mean,
I'm trying to think about what rhymes with Moa.
How hard he gets the right one. Kugler gives him the pronunciation, and he just follows it up with, "Yeah, you're right, Kevin. That was a great tackle by Cora Mora." Dude,
I think that.
What are you doing?
I think that maybe, and this is complete theory.
Yeah,
maybe there's a little bit of USC Notre Dame animosity there.
Ooh, good. All right, I like conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
All right, I like it.
Hat on a Tuesday.
I like it. Let me ask you a question though about the interceptions, and in particular one route. So one of the things that I like that I was nervous about earlier in the year because you worry about timing, you worry about certainly accuracy, is the in-breaking route. And I know we have a number that matters in regards to that, but it feels like some of these routes, and this will happen with a new quarterback, is it more Flacco, not being on time, or is it because and explain this to the folks. When you hear, well, you know what, he kind of flattened out the route instead of, and this is where route running, we talk about Amari Cooper, who is one of the best route runners in the game. Like, it is so important. I'm just bringing this up because now all of a sudden, like, these interceptions, these turnovers, as we get closer and closer to one, not only hopefully clinching a playoff spot, but then getting in, you have to avoid these. So is it one of those where precision is so important, and which way are you going?
Well, we're talking about the interception, right? Or are we talking about the Amari Cooper catch? Because technically they were both in-breaking routes. Amari kind of on a deep crosser. Not deep crosser, but a long in-breaking route.
I'm just saying more like a quick, it's
all timing. It's all timing and rapport, and I think that he doesn't have that with his receivers because he hasn't played with them very long, so that's the first issue. Secondly, it's a matter of reading the coverage. And on the play that he threw the interception on, it's a matter of where is the defender at this time when I'm throwing the football. It's very anticipatory. And basically he anticipated, based on what he saw in the pre-snap, look, that his inside receiver was going to be open, and he simply wasn't.
What about receivers flattening and not being precise?
That matters when you're trying to squeeze it through a tight window, because if you don't get enough depth, you kind of eliminate the window, the lane through which you can squeeze a ball. If you're to flatten out, that means you're going to get to the next defender in coverage quicker, and it's going to decrease your chances of completing that pass. But that matters, I think, mostly in situations in which it's third and whatever, and you're trying to run a route to the sticks and you flatten out too much, you catch it and you're a yard short. More than the interception. Like in that instance, I don't think it was necessarily about the flattening as much as I anticipate that he'll be open base in this coverage, and that's not what happened. And I made my decision, and I have to get it out because it's a timing throw to fit it through the window, and it wasn't there. The flat route was wide open, by the way, which, of course, everybody at home immediately jumps on Twitter and is like, that ball's in the flat all day, man. I can't believe you made that throw. But it's mostly a decision made off pre-snap look and not, taking a second to go, oh, he's not open, and just letting it rip. But you know what? On the same and the other side of the token here, if he's not out there letting it rip, they don't win that game. Like, it's that simple. That's the beauty of Joe Flacco is no matter how much rapport or lack thereof he has with his receivers, he's not afraid to let it to sling it around the yard. And that's what won them that game. He threw a tight window throw to Amari Cooper at a perfect spot, at a perfect time, which allowed him to break that tackle and get around the sideline, break another tackle, and score a touchdown. So you take the good with the bad, because that's still better than what you'd get out of DTR.
Yes.
A young quarterback who needs to see a guy open. Not saying that this is necessarily DTR, but this is more true than not with young guys. Needs to see a guy open before they throw the ball. That's not how the NFL works. You got to throw into windows that aren't there yet, or that you anticipate are going to be
before he
there.
breaks open.
Exactly,
Yep.
because that's how slim the margins are in this league to complete a pass. So I'd rather take a Flacco who might throw 2 picks in a game, but might also throw 3 touchdowns and lead you to victory.
And about those 3 touchdowns and about, the experience, because this is where I think it is so vital. You say, well, DTR, he might be waiting for a guy to get open. He just might not have the confidence to let that
Right.
go. Like, it's almost like a closer in baseball.
Yeah.
Like, when you're doing it for so long and you're one of the best in baseball, like, of course he's upset that he gave up a home run, but he's like, all right, hey, my focus is right here. And that's Joe Flacco. Like, okay, for 3 quarters, I didn't play my best football. I made some bad reads, but you know what? Doesn't matter, because this quarter is what matters. And it's easier said than done to say. You say that to DTR, or you say that to a PJ Walker. Those are backup quarterbacks. I know Joe Flacco is technically right now a backup quarterback, but he's a backup quarterback this stage in his career. He's been in all those situations, and for him, it's like, okay, I don't care what I've done for 3 quarters. My team needs me now, and I've got all the confidence in the world that we're gonna succeed.
Yeah, I think with DTR, you saw it one time, and it was when they needed a touchdown, or they needed a drive to get into field goal range against the Steelers to win that game. That's when he threw caution to the wind and said, screw it, I'm not going to wait for guys to get open. I'm not going to be afraid to make a mistake. I'm just going to let it rip. And even conversely, I think you see guys like Dak Prescott, who had a lot of picks last year, led the league, tied for the league lead in picks last year, and for much of the season was operating as if he was trying to avoid making those mistakes and wouldn't throw until he saw a guy open early in the year. He didn't have great numbers. Then he started to trust himself. He starts putting up crazy numbers. Then you see him play Buffalo, and they're closing off everything that he thinks should be there, and he has no idea where to go. And a lot of that is because I'm trying to avoid taking risk until I absolutely have to. You're not going to see a quarterback kind of get into that shell unless you have a young guy like a DTR, which is why there is an advantage, an inherent advantage, playing with Joe Flacco, because he's playing with nothing to lose. Like, he shouldn't, like the rest of the Browns, shouldn't even be here. He was on the couch a month ago, and now he's out there playing football and slinging it and using the arm talent that he very much still has, and the Browns are benefiting for it.
Week 16 of the Bold Ball Breakdown here on the Big Play Sports Network. Mike Chico Borman, Nick Shook, NFL.com and NFL Network. Browns taking care of business, having to come from behind to do so, but they got it done. 20-17 over the Bears. Now get set for the Houston Texans. Will C.J. Stroud play? Won't he play? We'll be discussing that here in a little bit. Along those same lines as we talk about the offense and we talk about Joe Flacco, so I declared, I made this a declaration yesterday, much like
I declare.
a mayor. Exactly, the mayor declares like today is going to be whatever.
Did you get one of those ceremonial processions and the little like horns that
kazoo?
and they'd pull out a scroll I hereby declare,
Now that's old school.
as the member of the Bold Coalition.
That's also, not only is that old school, I believe that's also the Loyal Order of Water Buffaloes in the Flintstones.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Now
Big-
we're deep
big
into
fan of-
the old school
yeah.
cartoon. I love the Flintstones.
Big fan of the Flintstones. But anyway, I declared yesterday on the show that throughout the course of this season, which, has had so many ups and downs, of course, we have looked at, how did they run the ball and how much did they run versus pass? And yesterday I said on the show, Nick, and I'd love to hear if you agree or disagree. I'm not even looking at that anymore. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying you don't have to run the ball. Of course you have to run the ball. But with Joe Flacco, if it takes 47 passes and they win, then it takes 47 passes and they win. I'm saying that I guess I believe that Kevin Stefanski and Joe Flacco and Alex Van Pelt are all on the same page, and that, hey, if this is our best opportunity, then we're going to go ahead and do it. I don't care what the percentages say, run versus pass versus run. Just do what you got to do. And if that's slinging it all over the yard, then sling it all over the yard.
Yeah, that requires blind faith in Kevin Stefanski at this point, which I think he's earned it. In the last month, I think he's earned it because of the way that he's coached up this team despite all the injuries that they've dealt with.
He's got to be in consideration.
Yeah, and
as you wrote in your write-up.
Whatever it takes to win. I think at this point, whatever it takes to win. You can't analyze run versus pass because you don't have Nick Chubb. You don't have 4/5 of your offensive line right now, or at least you didn't on Sunday. So you can't trust the run. You can't sit back and go, run the ball, come on, stop taking risks right after Joe Flacco throws an interception, because all of those standards and those markers that you use to base your knowledge on the situation for the game are out the window. You don't have the 3 of your 4 cornerstones are gone, and one of them's still injured in Myles Garrett. You're just playing with spare parts right now and trying to get the engine to run. And credit to Kevin Stefanski, he's figuring out a way. He's MacGyvering that offense into being able to move the ball down the field enough to win close games against opponents that if they were probably at full strength would beat by more than 3 points. And that's what it takes this time of year. I mean, oftentimes teams that make the playoffs and go on runs, they do it because they're healthy more than anything. They've just been able to avoid injuries. And the Browns have not. Over 25% of your payroll is on IR right now.
Yeah.
Think about that. That is catastrophic. Most teams would be headed to Cancun right now. Think about the Ravens when they lost Lamar Jackson down the back end of each of the last 2 years. They'd get in the playoffs last year and lose. 2 years ago, they missed the playoffs because they got Tyler Huntley, right?
By the way, how ironic is it, or crazy is it, and it's been that crazy of a season, all of these quarterbacks are injured.
Yeah.
But who's standing right now for Baltimore but Lamar Jackson? He's always hurt in December.
I got a message from a colleague on Sunday that said nobody's mentioned the fact that Lamar's playing in Week 15 for the first time in 3 years. And it's
Yeah, and everybody else is, they're going down like flies, but Lamar's standing.
Yeah, and that's why the Ravens are on top of the division. Why they're on
agree.
top of the conference right now and winning games that you think, man, they probably should have lost that game. I mean, the Jaguars had opportunities to beat them on Sunday night. They didn't. They didn't capitalize. The Rams had an opportunity to beat them and couldn't come through in overtime. And that's because, they've suffered some injuries, but the places that they've gotten hurt, they've actually had guys step up. Until Keaton Mitchell got hurt on Sunday, he was a big boost to that offense. Lamar's been healthy. They figured out ways to make it work without Mark Andrews, and a lot of that is the credit to Zay Flowers' emergence, Odell Beckham's role in that offense.
Isaiah Likely.
Yeah, Likely is a very good tight end.
He likes that. He likes his
Coastal
tight ends
Carolina,
anyway,
and he's been good in the NFL so far. They've been able to make it work, and that's a sign of depth, but that's also a sign of good coaching. And the Browns are in a situation now where even so much of their depth that they've pieced together has been lost, that now it is really just good coaching. And honestly, this is hyperbolic and it's often overblown. But I do think that there's something to say about a team that has gotten to this point and continues to believe that it's being doubted. I see Browns players tweet every week, feel free to jump off the bandwagon. We're not going to miss you, and it's an attitude as a team that, hey, look, we know we're going to have to go out and scratch and claw for 4 quarters. Nothing is going to be easy. So when something doesn't go our way or Joe Flacco throws a pick on the goal line, we're fine. We'll be back. Let's get the ball back. Let's get a stop, give him another shot. And that's more often than not, especially in the last month, that has produced victories for them. There's something to be said about a team that believes so much in each other that they can overcome anything, that eventually that actually bears out. That ends up being reality, and you see teams that should not be there find ways to win, and that's the Browns right now.
It's so funny that you brought that up because last night I joined the Garage Beers podcast, and we talked about that's exactly right, and we talked about that very issue of, normally when you say, and we all roll our eyes, like last year Kansas City, when you'd hear Kelsey and Mahomes,
nobody believed in us, dude. You've been in the AFC Championship like 4 years in a row. Right. Everybody believed in you.
But with this Browns team, I mean, hell, if you're gonna, and I'm with you. Like, obviously, you still have to execute. Obviously, you still got to go out there and play the game. But hey, you're gonna go with any advantage you can get. And right now, the Browns can play that boulder on our shoulder type, attitude, because they have had so much happen, and yes, so much is doubted. And now all of a sudden, you look in that locker room and you listen to those. I know we've been talking about it over the last couple of weeks, but I'll say it again. You watch those videos in the locker room. You watch and hear what Kevin Stefanski says, and not just Kevin Stefanski, what Flacco says. You watch Dustin Hopkins and Corey Bojorquez. Bojorquez says, I just hold his balls. Dustin's like, hey, it's my good buddy.
Yeah, phrasing, but all right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just, but I mean, there is that. It's there. It's real, and I just feel like, yeah, hey, if a team can legitimately use that advantage to galvanize them, it's the Browns, and I think they're using it, and good for them.
Yeah, it's funny because if you look at the AFC standings as a whole, you have your division leaders. You have Baltimore, Miami, Kansas City, Jacksonville. The Browns have as good as or a better record than two of those division leaders. Kansas City, they're tied 9-5. They're better than Jacksonville at 8-6, and they've also beaten them. But it's funny because if you think about the Browns from the national perspective where I live and operate, people would not talk about them if Joe Flacco wasn't playing quarterback. If DTR was leading them to these victories, they would ignore them because they would look at them and say, nah, you know what, they're going to flame out in the playoffs, which I understand. That's justified. But because Joe Flacco's there, they end up on the morning talk shows because, oh, my God, Joe Flacco's leading them to victories.
And some are poo-pooing, even like Dan Patrick yesterday.
And that's totally fair and justified.
Exactly.
Like, I cannot argue with that at all.
Exactly.
Because on paper, they are defying logic right now.
And even with Flacco, he's like, yeah, because this is what Patrick said yesterday. They do that little who had a great weekend, and somebody said the Browns, and he said, yeah. He's like, they did. And the Flacco story, it's one of those where if you're an announcer, you're a commentator, he's like, you got to bring it up. Flacco off his couch and, all these other Josh Dobbs, he's like, but we're not hearing much about Josh Dobbs these days. But what he did say was, okay, Joe Flacco rallied them and they won. That's huge. But he threw 3 interceptions, and this is where he poo-pooed it. He said, you do that in the playoffs. If you get there, you're going home.
I would believe that for any other team but this one. Any other team than this one, I totally
that's
agree.
exactly what I was thinking, too.
And turnovers are a random element in football. It's very hard to predict turnovers, but I can pretty safely predict that the Browns are going to turn the ball over a couple times a game, and I don't know if the defense is going to get it back. They've gotten better at that recently, but it's been a struggle for them to create turnovers.
And you're losing key pieces.
And yet they're 9-5. And it kind of falls in line with the teams that are behind them in the conference standings right now. Cincinnati at 8-6. Jake Browning is becoming a story. They keep winning football games even when it looks like they shouldn't. And Indianapolis is still hanging around at 8-6. They beat the Steelers. They come back from down 13-0 to win handily against a Steelers team that's headed for Cancun. So it's a prevalent theme right now.
Say that again, will you?
The Steelers are headed for Cancun.
Yes.
They are packing their bags and planning their vacations. Their season is over.
Tea times, baby. Tea times.
Yeah. And yet the Browns, there they are at 9-5. And I've actually gotten to the point now where I am the most cynical of people you will meet in life and especially in football. I've seen it too many times where I've been proven, don't trust the fun story. Trust your eyes. Trust what you see when you watch teams. Like Philadelphia is not a Super Bowl team right now. They are 5th in the NFC, the number 1 wild card team. They got 10 wins to their name, but they're not a Super Bowl team right now. But San Francisco is, and I trust my eyes with that. The AFC, I have no idea because the Ravens are the top seed at 11-3. The Browns went into Baltimore and beat them with Deshaun Watson given, and they don't have that guy anymore. And yet every week I watch them and they find ways to win, but at the same time I'm thinking they're not dominant. I'm not feeling comfortable if I had to put my life on the line right now to say, you have to kill me unless the Ravens make the Super Bowl. I'm not doing that. I'm walking out. No chance. But that's why I think that the Browns, are now defying expectations and logic so much that, first off, they're playing with house money because you just have to enjoy the ride from here. They have 9 wins. They've gotten here when they shouldn't be here. And if they win their last 3 games, they'll finish with 12 wins and go 12-5 on their 4th starting quarterback, which would be insane. But at this point, I'm just like, man, they keep finding ways to win when I count them out. Like every time, even Sunday, I'm like, there's no way they come back and win this game. And yet they pulled it off to the point where, you're playing with house money and you just have to enjoy it, because I looked at the playoff picture and I thought, okay, so let's say the Browns finished at the 5 seed and they played Jacksonville or Houston in the first round. Winnable game. Let's say they win that game on the road. Who do they play in the second round? Probably Baltimore, because they got the bye and the Browns would be a wild card winner. Whereas other division teams are probably going to, the division leaders are probably going to win their games. So then you go into Baltimore. Winnable game. You've done it already this season. Do I feel like I would want to pick the Browns in that situation if I had to put my prediction on the line, which I will? No, I probably won't, because, again, I am a cynic. But I can see them winning that game. And then all of a sudden you're at the conference championship game.
You're at the point where nothing surprises you.
Nothing. I'm already past that point
Way
now.
past it. Yeah, you're
way
right.
past
Way
that
past
point.
it.
So could I see the Browns go on a run? Yeah. Are they way too hurt to go on a run? Absolutely. Am I going to say they're going to the Super Bowl now? No. I'm not. But if they do, don't be surprised, just because everything that we know and every rule in the world, every law that we've come to accept as fact is now out the window with
Just remember, Uncle Shooky told you. He warned you. He told you to be prepared. Yeah, turn that hat back. That's right. You're going to go over the top next in your arm wrestling. All right. You actually took me right where I want to go in terms of the...
My fiance did one of her favorite movies. She went
Over
for Halloween one year. She's like, we should go with Stallone and somebody else from Over the Top. And I was like, what? I was like, what is Over the Top? She's like, you never saw the arm wrestling movie with Sylvester Stallone in the 80s? I was like, no. She's like, yeah, he turns his hat backward and that's when he wins. And I'm like, so that's our costume?
What's so hilarious about that flick is that Kenny Loggins' Meet Me Halfway is like the theme song from it. Like
Kenny Loggins went on a run in the 80s. He had Caddyshack.
Yeah, he did.
He had Danger Zone.
Right. Well, he's not going to be a caddy all his life, is he? I'm all right. What are you, a diabetic? I don't know. All right. You brought it up. It's hard to keep a train of thought here, but we somehow, some way do it.
It's a crazy train.
How important do you think the Browns staying in that 5 spot is? And I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, just forgive me, but let's say playoffs, we look at the playoffs, because it feels like that AFC South. I mean, Jacksonville, I'm not saying anybody is a gimme, but do you feel safer playing Jacksonville or Indianapolis or Houston as opposed to Kansas City or Miami?
Yeah, and Kansas City is the least scariest they've been in the last 5 years this year, because their offense has problems, and Patrick Mahomes, even when they beat the Patriots by double digits, is still very visibly frustrated on the sideline. They cannot figure it out, and it's a talent thing, and I don't think that gets fixed in a month. But if you had to go into Arrowhead, I still wouldn't feel great about it. I would not feel good about Baltimore or Miami either. There are flaws in both teams that make them beatable, but you have to play a near-perfect game to pull it off. Honestly, any matchup to me, it goes back to what I said earlier. At that point, I'm just like, man, whatever. Like, whatever happens, if they find a way to win, great. And if they don't, good season. Because at this point, that's what it is, good season. So I'm not even going to really go into that, like, that far down the road and think, like, oh, could they beat this team? They could beat anybody because they've beaten teams and won games that they shouldn't have won already. What's interesting, though, is where do you have to get to get the 5 seed, to get, finish off the playoff run? Because you got a 1-game lead on the teams behind you, but you do play one of them in Week 18. That's Cincinnati, which could be a huge game for seeding or for your playoff lives.
Yep.
Indianapolis refuses to go away. Houston refuses to go away, and Jacksonville's on a skid, and they've opened the door for the other 2 teams to get back into the race. So any of those 3 teams could be your playoff matchup if you get there, but you got to take care of business first. And we've talked about this weeks ago. 11 wins is the point. And I honestly got to give myself a very slight pat in the back, because I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, we're like, well, how many wins is it going to take?
You really think it's 11 still?
I still think it's 11 to guarantee that you are safely in the playoffs.
Because I feel like everybody feels like 10 is extremely safe. EK even said, what, 9? He's like, I'll bet you
10, you're in a tie. But 10 also puts you in the threat of losing out to a spot to, like, let's say you win this week and you lose your last 2. and one of those losses is to Cincinnati, and you end up in a tie with Cincinnati in the standings, you could drop from 5 to 7 because I don't know how the tiebreakers work, but you've already got to win over them. If they get that win, it's going to muck things up. Indianapolis and Houston, they're both 8-6. Jacksonville's 8-6, so that division has to sort itself out. We have that extra wild card spot, but
I feel
Buffalo
like
is
some
still
of the tiebreakers would work.
Buffalo is still lingering. Like 10 is not entirely safe. 11 is entirely safe.
Yeah.
So the beauty of it is, what did we say? You had to win 3 of your last 4 to get to 11.
Yeah.
Well, you got 3 games left. You need to win 2 of them. The fact that they were able to pull that out had to feel like a huge relief to Browns fans who are aiming for that 11-win mark, because I'm sitting there thinking, man, they're going to blow it. They're going to blow an opportunity right now to have a good spot to where they can get to 11 wins by losing to a team that they shouldn't lose to. And they found a way to pull it out. So Houston's going to be tough. New York, you should beat them, which, by the way, people are very excited for that game here. The ticket market there is nuts right now. Absolutely insane. And then Cincinnati, Week 18 in Cincinnati. And look, I hate to say this. I don't want to bring up old stuff. Well, I got to bring up old stuff.
You got to bring up old stuff.
But the Browns did once go to Cincinnati late in the season and lost on a windy day along the shore of the Ohio River, and it cost them a playoff spot in 2007. And I'm not going to say that it'll cost them a spot, but it could cost them a seeding spot and end up sending them to Miami for the first round of the wild card, first round of the playoff, super wild card weekend. Don't forget, it's super wild card weekend.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Good,
somebody has to write it all the time.
Yeah.
It's imprinted in my brain. So you need to win Sunday, but you really got to take it week by week. Like, you need to beat New York and you need to beat Cincinnati. But if you beat Houston, you can sleep a little bit easier.
We say it as well. We're just trying to be 1-0. That's it. We're just trying to get to 1-0. I mentioned this last week as well, and I think Albert Breer wrote a piece on it for Monday Morning Quarterback also last week. You know, Bill Callahan, this is where he's earning that money, and this is where, like, you really appreciate.
It's tough.
I mean, and I don't want to say like, oh, hey, because obviously we saw Montez Sweat was still back there, but you feel like he's going to give you, Callahan, the best chance, because, I mean, you know, and I don't know what that means exactly. I mean, you can only do so much. I'm not saying that this guy, you know, he waves a magic wand and all of a sudden, you know, oh, you're Anthony Munoz. It doesn't work that way. But
can you imagine?
That would be nice, wouldn't
it? Bibbidi, Anthony Munoz. Here's your gold jacket. Go be a hero.
If I only had a left tackle. So he gives you, like, he knows these guys. I mean, Leroy Watson, I wouldn't know Leroy Watson if he walked in the studio right now.
It's like Earl Watford.
Yeah.
Came and played for the Browns for a moment.
But you know that Callahan is going to study. You know that Callahan is gonna figure, okay, where can we get some sort of an advantage? To me, and I agree with Albert, like, this is where you are so thankful that you have a guy like Bill Callahan on the offensive line.
And honestly, Jim Schwartz on the defensive side too.
Oh, yeah, but I'm just saying the way the offensive line has just completely been
ravaged
Yeah.
by injuries. Yeah, decimated.
And you're dealing with, you know, your fourth quarterback.
Who's not the most fleet of foot. And yet you're finding ways to win. Yeah, it speaks to the strength of their staff. I think that we have rightfully criticized the staff in the past, but at this point they've earned a pass for the rest of the year. To the point where Stefanski should be considered for Coach of the Year. And I'm actually seeing it pick up some traction outside of Cleveland, which is fun, that people are paying attention and seeing what he's doing. But it speaks to the strength of the staff that he's hired. Veteran guys in Callahan, in Schwartz, who are leaning on years, decades of experience. They've been through adversity before. They know how to handle this. This is not Joe Woods trying to figure out the defense in Week 16. This is Jim Schwartz, who is going to pay for being aggressive sometimes, but more often than not, they're going to produce. And I love how he's honest when they don't produce, and they're like, what's wrong? And he's like, I don't know, but we're going to try it again next week. Like, this is how can you not love this team? And, like, I say that from somebody who covers all 32. How can you not love the way that this team has performed amid all of the adversity? I mean, all the adversity in the world. They lost their best offensive player in Week 2, and they've still found ways to win. David Njoku's having a career year. I said this to one of my colleagues the other day. If Joe Flacco was David Njoku's quarterback for the rest of his career, he'd end up in Canton. Like, that's how productive he's been with Joe Flacco. Him and Elijah Moore suddenly resurfacing with Flacco throwing him footballs, and Amari Cooper, obviously his favorite target. They are making chicken salad out of chicken you-know-what, and it's remarkable to watch, and Callahan's a very big part of that, and finding ways to protect. And let's face it, they were struggling up there against guys like Sweat. They became a bit of a sieve, and I understand why. The talent deficiency is so glaring in that instance, and I'm sitting there thinking, man, there's just no way they're going to be able to move the ball, and yet they schemed up enough opportunities to get Sweat to kind of get out of his rush lane and buy Flacco time. They pull guys over and block. Whatever they had to do to buy Flacco another half second to get the ball out, and it produced a win for them. And that just speaks again to the years of experience that the staff has.
On the flip side, you mentioned Schwartz, you mentioned the defense. Losing Grant Delpit, unfortunately, on the day that he signed that extension, and he is
good job getting your money, by the way.
Wow, he has he's been great this year. How do you overcome that? I mean, you feel good about some of these guys that have gotten some time, and that is one thing. Kevin addressed it this week. He said, "Look, we have all season long made it a priority." And I'm not saying, I mean, you would know this better than I. I'm not saying that all teams don't try to make it a priority to get guys lower on the depth chart some time just in case. But Kevin made it seem like, no, we always do this. So you feel good about some of these youngsters, but you don't lose a guy like Grant Delpit who was having a career year and say, oh, yeah, okay, no big deal. So how does that loss affect him?
I mean, you hope that Juan Thornhill can make it back. Because he's not been available, and that has hurt them. I mean, they were playing with guys like they elevated Tanner McAllister from the practice squad to have him available. He played just special teams on Sunday, but Cam Mitchell actually made a huge play at one point in the game. Yep. That kid's a rookie. Duron Harmon. I got a message from a colleague after the latest wave of Browns players going to IR, in which I was like, well, there it goes. They are so decimated. He goes, yeah, I can't imagine you were planning on relying on Joe Flacco and Duron Harmon in Week 15. And I was like, Duron Harmon's on the roster? I completely missed that signing.
And he was another one.
And he was this close to breaking up that touchdown pass, to Cole Kmet. And eventually that does kind of become overwhelming, especially against the elite teams in the NFL. But it is such a strange year in which only one team, in my opinion, has proven itself to be truly elite that you're just going to ride it. You're going to ride this thing till the wheels fall off and hope that you can piece together enough, spare parts to keep it moving. And so, I mean, Ronnie Hickman played almost 100% of the defensive snaps. Ronnie Hickman, preseason standout, wasn't going to make the team.
Undrafted.
Ends up coming in and making a difference. Martin Emerson's been playing good ball. Greg Newsome probably needs to stop dancing as much as he does.
I'm sorry. I'm going to say it. I know people are going to
Every pass breakup, he's like doing the... Like, what is this? Are you auditioning for Madden, motion capture?
You make a pick, I get it. But if it's second down and 9 and, you break up a pass, just go back to the huddle.
Well, Jim Schwartz wants them to celebrate. That's been talked about ad nauseum this year. He wants them to celebrate every victory on a per play basis. Well,
but okay, celebrate.
It's second and 9, and I'm thinking
I celebrated.
Yeah, I'm thinking, oh my God, they're gonna get back to the line, and you're still gonna be dancing. Get back to the huddle.
He looks like he's dancing like Webster Slaughter used to when Slaughter would catch those touchdowns from Bernie, and Slaughter would do the. Again, I apologize.
Well, we won't see you on a wedding reception dance floor anytime soon. But
it's a full body dry heave.
The leaping high five from back in the day, that was a big thing. Have you ever watched clips from the 80s, by the way? How many guys just celebrated by jumping in the air and high-fiving each other?
Yeah.
The 80s were a wild time for celebrations. It was like the dark ages.
And they do him and Langhorne, Slaughter and Langhorne would do that little, and then kind of up and under, kind of like you're doing a tomahawk almost.
Well, I mean, it's like any art, right? Eventually it progresses over time. People come up with new ways to be more creative, and they were very basic at the time. But Greg Newsome and his dancing, that's great that you can celebrate and that you are doing that. But I did get texts during that game where it's like, well, Newsome, stop dancing. It's triggering me. It's like, that's because they're losing.
I wondered if it was just me. All right, good.
A lot of people are upset.
And I love Newsome. I loved him at Northwestern, loved the pick, loved everything about him. But, yeah.
I don't have a problem with it, but it's just time and place.
Right. Okay, so Week 16, Bold Ball Breakdown. Mike Chico Borman, he's Nick Shook, NFL.com and the NFL Network. Browns win 20-17. They improve to 9-5 amidst all of this chaos, all of the injuries. 9-5, getting set to take on the Houston Texans this weekend. We'll get to them in a moment. C.J. Stroud, will he or won't he? But before we wrap this up for last Sunday and the win over Chicago, it, of course, is time for Numbers That Matter. And I got to say, Mr. Shook, you've come up with some doozies this week. You've been on a roll the last couple, but this, you have one later on here. 1, 2, 3. It's like the fourth or fifth one. I'll let you know which one it is, but that I absolutely loved. But we will start Numbers That Matter from Sunday's game. Sunday's win over Chicago with 2.
This one's simple. Joe Flacco has 2 wins to his name now as a starter. He is 2-1 as the starting quarterback of your Cleveland Browns.
Very simple. 9.
9 years have passed since the Browns' last win after trailing by 10 or more points in the fourth quarter. That game was Week 5 of the 2014 season against Tennessee. Would you like to know the hero from that day?
Please.
His name was none other than Travis Benjamin, who caught 2 touchdown passes from Brian Hoyer in the fourth quarter. We also had a Tank Carter, TCU legend, Tank Carter blocked punt that got the Browns 2 points. Billy Cundiff was the kicker, and tight end Jim Dre caught a touchdown pass in that game.
Travis Benjamin, very slithery out of Miami. Yeah, very slithery out of the U.
Had a nice career.
Yeah, he did. He did. Okay, so number 10.
Number 10, David Njoku finished, I talked about, he's beheaded to Canton if Joe Flacco was his quarterback for the rest of his career. He finished with a career-high 10 receptions in that game, led the Browns in receiving with 10 catches for 104 yards and a touchdown, including 2 massive 30-plus yard receptions on the final drive ahead of Dustin Hopkins' game-winning field goal.
You know, I don't care what anybody says, and I think, you know, obviously in this town we all love Chief, so it's, I mean, but
he's really, really becoming a fan favorite this year.
Yes, and I think every offense always looks that much better, that much more dynamic when the tight end is involved. Especially, I mean, in part because in today's day and age, the tight end has become, you know, that wide receiver.
Kind of the X factor, yeah.
But, I mean, it just, we've been waiting for it. I mean, fans have been, gosh, when is Njoku going to, because the guy is incredibly athletic. Yeah.
Yeah, he already got paid. Yeah, and the narrative on him has been unfairly focused on how he drops passes in key situations. And he's had those moments this year, but you got to credit him, man. He's having a career year, and he's coming through in key moments, and he's got this weird knack for, like, even if he doesn't have the most reliable hands when he's open, he makes these contested catches where you're like, how did he hang on? Like the win over Tampa Bay last year where he caught that touchdown pass on 4th down in the back of the end zone. He basically did the same thing again on Sunday with a defender draped all over him and hung onto a football that some Bears fans, I won't name anybody, believe that he may have had his heel out of bounds, but the touchdown stood.
Him and Kareem like that little hurdle move, too.
Oh, yeah.
I like that.
Hyper-athletic guys love to make somebody else look bad.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it's funny. His story, his arc has just been really fun to watch. Obviously not ideal, but, like, he got into that. They called it a cooking accident. He was having a bonfire in his backyard, and he used the wrong lighter fluid and it, like, blew up in his face and ran down his wrist. Guy's face was charred, and he comes out and finds a way to play that Sunday and has continued to play. You want to talk about somebody who's been there in times of adversity when everything else seems to be falling apart around you, and the only thing left that's standing is Terminal Tower, and you're still worried about the structural integrity of that building. Well, there's David Njoku. He's Key Tower. He's like, I got you. I'm the tallest building between New York and Chicago, and I'm going to carry this team.
I know they had Peyton Hillis with the guitar this
weird.
weekend.
Considering how he left, that was weird.
Yeah. Yeah, because that was a guy who was like, well, I'm sorry, my throat's sore.
You put 3 guys in a room, one of them got married on a bye week, and neither of them is us.
That was well done, Shook. Yes, that would have been one Peyton Hillis, and then he also decided, you know what? And probably some bad advice from his agent. Well, it was bad advice from his agent, but yeah, my nose is a little runny. I'm sorry.
Well, look, man, he was on the cover of Madden 12. You know, you got to protect that image.
Oh, gosh. We had so many great years here. All right. 13 is our next number that matters.
The Browns scored 13 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. That's pretty self-explanatory, but also remarkable considering how the rest of the game went.
Okay, and here it is. This is my favorite stat, and it speaks to something we opened the show with pretty much. But it involves Joe Flacco 103.7. Lay it on me, baby.
That was Joe Flacco's passer rating difference between the fourth quarter and the rest of the game. Now, of course, interceptions, I think, unfairly or disproportionately affect your passer rating, but it was 40.7 through three quarters. He put up a 144.4 in the fourth quarter. He completed 11 of 13 passes for 212 yards and a touchdown in the fourth quarter to bring his number on the day to 103.7. Talk about a last-second saving of face. Just an incredible turnaround in the fourth quarter. I don't have a nickname for him, but it's like it's not like Slinging Joe Flacco, but I don't know. It's fun Flacco. We'll go with that.
Well, I mean, Joe Cool obviously is a very easy one that everybody, but like
that was also used in the Peanuts comic strip. So.
It's just the idea, like I said, I use that closer analogy. Like, you've got to have a short memory. It's like a DB.
Flush it.
You just got burnt. You just got toasted for a touchdown.
Flush it.
You got to flush it. And that's something, in my opinion, only a veteran, but even all veterans don't have the ability to do that. So you get a veteran who is now a backup who just had three quarters that left a lot to be desired, and he said, you know what? To hell with it. We still got a chance to win, and we're going to go win.
There was a tweet out there that ruffled some Browns fans' feathers. It basically said, I'm not sure if Deshaun Watson would have came back from that and led them to that win. You throw 3 picks, you're Deshaun Watson, you're probably in your own head. Not that he's not mentally tough, but it takes a special cat to be able to overcome that. And again, it's Flacco who's like, man, what do I have to lose? I'm just going to keep throwing it. What? It's either this or retirement. That's going to be here eventually anyway. Might as well go play.
All right, on to the Houston Texans. Browns knocking off the Bears 20-17. They will get Houston on the road at Houston. Still waiting to see if C.J. Stroud, who's still in concussion protocol, the former Ohio State standout, and of course has been in the MVP discussion for a little bit. Probably not anymore, but C.J. Stroud, will he or won't he? 13 is a number that matters for the Texans. What's that?
13 is much like the Browns, the Texans overcame a 13-point deficit to beat the Titans on the road last weekend. They also eliminated the Titans, the division rival, from the postseason with that win. And to rub a little more salt in the wound that the Titans were the ones who opened up, they did it to the Titans on the day that the Titans were wearing the Houston Oilers throwbacks.
I've already said on social media, like, the old Oilers love you blue unis are the
some people in Vegas are probably saying that right now.
Are the best unis of all time, in my opinion.
They are among the best.
Ooh, I'll put them right at the top.
I mean, powder blue.
Powder blue always looks good. Chargers,
great.
Yeah, powder blue always looks good.
Personally, I'm a big fan of powder blue mixed with navy blue. And 2 different shades of blue, but not how the Chargers did it in their most recent uniforms before they redid them. But the powder blue and the red, it takes you,
and
especially
the
if you
Derrick
grew up
on
in
the helmet. I mean, it's just they were.
It takes you back to just a beautiful time.
I just don't know why they would.
Because it's their possession. That is the Oilers franchise. Do I agree with it? No. Do I think the Texans would be fantastically positioned and get the ultimate trump card on the Titans by changing their colors to powder blue and red and with the current logo or whatever and doing a rebrand and just owning those colors? That would be awesome.
Like Vrabel in the Bum Phillips hat?
Yeah, rubbing it in. But that's the beauty of it. If you're going to talk a big game, you better back it up, and they didn't. And that's why it was fun to watch the Texans. And by the way, Case Keenum, familiar face here in Cleveland, was the one who led them to victory.
By the way, I was just going to say, so many last week. And you mentioned it, the deficit. Houston had to come from behind. The Browns had to come from behind. 146 is our next number that matters, and it involves a guy, as you just hinted, we know very, very well here in Cleveland.
Didn't see him play that much in Cleveland, but he was here, which could be said about a lot of guys, Ken Dorsey. Case Keenum's yardage total in the final 2 quarters of that game was 146. He finished at 229. So for you math wizards at home or wherever you're watching this live, that means that a lot of his yards came in the final 2 quarters. That means he wasn't doing very well early, and then he started to figure it out. And I'm not going to say he led them to victory because I watched that game live, and it was more their defense giving them multiple opportunities, just one after another, to find a way to score and put points on the board. But you also need your quarterback to come through in the clutch in a few moments, and he certainly did on one specific drive to tie the game with a touchdown.
Well, the other thing you need, and this is what their offensive coordinator Slowick decided, and good for him, we're going to lean on Devin Singletary, and he did the job. The next number that matter is
the Bills outcast. 170 is the number. The Bills outcast, Devin Singletary, who wasn't good enough to run the ball in Buffalo. He was.
We're going to be talking Buffalo here in a moment.
Their scheme is not good enough to highlight him. He finished with 170 scrimmage yards on Sunday, and 121 of that came on the ground. He also almost had a walk-off touchdown in overtime, but it got called back by a holding call on John Mechie, who's a receiver, if you're not familiar with John Mechie. And I was like, what? That's going to bring it back? How did that affect the play?
Georgia? Yeah, he's
a Bama.
Bama, that's right.
He's an Alabama guy. But Singletary carried the day for them, and he's going to be a guy that Browns fans are going to have to pay attention to on Sunday.
Okay, and the final one is 1,829.
Yeah, and it's not a yardage total. This is not Tyreek Hill.
This is
Hill's
awesome.
Receiving
this
total.
Is hilarious.
That's I Googled last night because I had the dates, but I didn't have the total day calculator. So I can't confirm if this is accurate, but I think it is based on this free search engine result that I received at 1:30 in the morning.
If you found it on the internet, it's the truth.
It must be true.
Yeah.
1,829 days between Case Keenum's last game-winning touchdown pass thrown in the final minutes of a game and Sunday's touchdown pass to Noah Brown. And that last one before Sunday's was the Minneapolis Miracle, the touchdown pass to Stephon Diggs that led the Vikings to a literally last-second win over the Saints in the divisional round of the playoffs.
Never. Joe Buck. That was an awesome call.
Diggs!
Awesome call. Yeah, incredible. Okay, so that gets us ready for the Houston Texans coming up this Sunday on the road at Houston. Browns, obviously, as we said, 3 games remaining. They are now 9-5 after the win over Chicago at Houston, home to the Jets, on the road against Cincinnati. As we look at this Houston game coming up on Sunday, I mean, the obvious one is it going to be C.J. Stroud? Is it going to be Case Keenum? C.J. Stroud still in concussion protocol.
Yeah, and Tuesday being concussion protocol after being in it last week is not super encouraging. It didn't sound like at the end of last week that the Texans staff, D'Amico Ryan specifically, was like super concerned with whether he could play Sunday. He was just more concerned with making sure CJ was okay. That's not encouraging for, if you're a fan of a team that wants that guy to play on Sunday, but it is still only Tuesday, so we'll continue to monitor it. That obviously makes a big difference between how the Texans look on paper when you go into this game, because C.J. Stroud is running away with Offensive Rookie of the Year. He has elevated this offense to the point that the Texans are in playoff contention when they were one of the worst teams in football for the last 3 or 4 years. So that is massive. But what's more important to me is how big of a test it's going to be of a Browns defense that is notably not as good on the road.
Yep.
The fact that this game
like
is not
really,
in Cleveland.
I mean, you talk about discrepancies.
Drastically different.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to find a way to, A, prepare for 2 different styles of offense, and B, get enough stops, because if you account for a turnover or 2 from Flacco, you're going to have to play really well on the defensive side of the ball to win that game. And Houston, for the first time in years, has a reason to feel excited about its team, so you're not going into Energy Stadium or whatever it's called now. Used to be Reliant Stadium. Corporate names, I don't keep up with them anymore.
I don't either.
You're not going to walk into one of those stadiums that's going to look like Bank of America Stadium did in Charlotte on Sunday, where you could get tickets for as low as 45 cents a pop. These people are going to be ready. They're going to be loud. The roof may or may not be closed. If I had to guess, it's going to be closed because it's December, even in Texas, and you want the noise being up. So the Browns have to be prepared to play as well defensively as possible.
So if C.J. Stroud is back, he is still not going to have the weapons that he was having for most of the season, and that is also a pretty big factor.
Tank Dell's out for the year, suffered a fractured fibula a few weeks ago. That is notable in how this offense has operated. Nico Collins did not play last week. That's been his favorite receiver. He's having a career year with C.J. Stroud. It's basically the Noah Brown and Dalton Schultz show with Robert Woods making a cameo or 2.
Schultz has been banged up. He just got back.
Yeah, he's been in and out. Brevin Jordan is another tight end, and you have Mechie, who hasn't really done much of anything this season. They're not at 100%, much like your defense isn't, but the big thing is going to be Stroud, because if it's Keenum, then they're going to rely on the run game. Then you have to stop the run, and that can be your focus, and just prevent Keenum from killing you with a less than fully stocked cupboard when it comes to weapons on the outside. But if Stroud's playing, that's the wild card. That's where everything changes. So the Browns just have to be better overall, no matter who's playing quarterback. They got to be better on defense to win this game.
So my quandary here, Nick Shook, is it fair for us to make a prediction Prediction.
Well, the
Pain.
problem, here's the thing. Predictions have to, like for me, they come today. So I don't have time to see if CJ Stroud's going to play.
Well, good. Okay.
I can look like an idiot by Friday.
So then I guess
before.
my next question is, other than what is your prediction, my next question is, does CJ Stroud starting at quarterback versus Case Keenum starting at quarterback, does that have any
Yeah, I think if Stroud plays, the Browns might lose. If Keenum plays, they got a good shot. It's that much of a difference. I am going to go with what exists right now and try to read the tea leaves as it pertains to Stroud. And I'm just going to flat out say that the Browns go in there and they find a way to win. 23-21 is what I'm
wouldn't
going
you at
with.
this point?
23-21. I had 27-19 last week, and they won 20-17. So I wasn't like super
By
far
the way,
off.
MJD,
Nailed
Maurice
it.
Jones-Drew,
Let's not talk about
2017.
MJD in this show because I'm trying to beat him in predictions. He's first, I'm second, I'm 2 games back, or at least I was going into the weekend. I need an update on the standings.
Who's third? Did I see?
My fellow, maybe Patra.
Yeah, I think that's.
I don't know. Let's find that tweet where the Browns tried to. Well, they made fun of my colleagues,
Yeah,
but not me because I was right.
yeah, because 4 of them had the Bears winning, which
It was
I
split.
mean,
It's 50-50.
a lot of injuries, but yeah, MJD had it 20-17. Well, that gives you something to strive for.
Yeah,
buddy.
I got Browns fans in my mentions going. Nick Shook's learned his lesson.
Okay, so
All right.
you say what was your score again?
23-21. Dustin Hopkins sends the Browns back to Cleveland a winner.
Okay, I'm gonna go Browns as well. I'm gonna go boring score here. I'm gonna go 21-14.
That is boring.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 21-14. I think a relatively as much as we love the fireworks and we're always ready for fireworks, there'll be some fireworks.
You know who's third? Your boy, Eric Edholm.
At home, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, we got to get him. We first have to get shirts.
Yeah.
For the bold ball break.
Yeah, no, he's not bald. He's bold, but he's not bald.
Yeah. No, he's not.
Got to have all 3 Bs.
That's
to be in
right.
the club.
All right, so that is it for the Browns portion of this as they get set for the Houston Texans. In closing, want to go around the league here quickly. First of all, the game that was supposed to be the game of the week that was anything but the game of the week, the Bills 31, the Cowboys 10. You wrote about it. We talked about it, referenced it a little bit earlier in the show. Gee, suddenly Buffalo, I don't know if it's because Ken Dorsey's gone now, but you decide, why don't we run the ball? And if we have success running the ball with James Cook, as they did, let's keep running the ball. That was one factor in this game. James Cook, over 200. What was your next-gen stat, by the way? Over 200 scrimmage yards. And he had a rushing touchdown and a receiving touchdown.
Yeah, he was fantastic. First off, they ran the ball in a traditional scheme, which they have not done in years. It was like watching not a sleeping giant, but a bear that was in hibernation for so long that people thought he was dead, come out of the cave and be like, "Where's the salmon? It's time to feed." Because
can you do that again?
I'm a bear.
Where's the salmon? It's time to feed.
Chicago Bears, whoa, they didn't roar this loud on Sunday. He was fantastic. 25 carries, 179 on the ground, 1 touchdown. They dominated at the point of attack, just bullied the Cowboys. Startlingly so. I felt really good about Dak Prescott's MVP chances. The Cowboys were ascending, and everyone was just saying, well, where's the catch? When are they going to prove to us that they're still the Cowboys? So they just did that on Sunday. They're really good at home. They're not great on the road. They're 3-4 on the road this year, and they have another road game coming up. But I think it's interesting because I think everybody was ready to bury the Bills at 6-6, and because I was not in that group. They were premature. There was the whole McDermott thing that came out about how he made a reference to 9/11.
Kind of galvanized them.
Yeah, that they're rallying around them and around each other and playing great football the last 2 weeks. And now the problem is that Bills fans they're going to be the team that nobody wants to see in the playoffs. Well, they still got to get there, but they are playing really good football. And
How difficult will it be for them to get there?
Not that hard. I mean, they're 8-6. They're on the outside looking in, but the other 2 teams right behind the Browns are 8-6. So if they just keep winning games, they'll make it. They'll get in there because one of those teams is going to cannibalize the other in the AFC South. So it's probably going to happen if they win out. But Josh Allen threw 15 passes in this game. They put up 31 points. He completed 7 of them for 94 yards and a touchdown. He could have sat out the second half. That's how dominant they were on the ground. and at the point of attack. So that's scary when you see that from a team that seems to be peaking at the right time. They've overcome some injuries, and it's a wake-up call to the Cowboys, who need to probably look inward and think, maybe we're not quite as good, and it's not as easy as we thought it would be.
Yeah, I mean, you see Buffalo scores 31 points. You see Buffalo puts up 351 yards of total offense. You're just assuming Josh Allen threw it all over the yard.
And he didn't.
And
Not
that's,
even close.
that's a very good sign for the Bills. And one thing that always, I understand James Cook is not, is not 6'2", 230. But you know what? You can still run him. Like, I think we get too caught up in scat back versus bell cow versus, like, the guy just flat out can run the football. He's decisive. He's quick to the hole. I'm not saying you want to overburden him and you want to wear him out, and I get all of that.
Oh, I think he's fresh. He's young.
Yeah,
Why not?
And that's what they were saying during the game. How often did you hear him say it? Like, he's got those young, fresh legs.
He does, because he doesn't get the ball very much.
Give him the ball.
And
Let
McDermott.
James cook.
Oh.
Let James cook. That's
Okay.
right, Bohm. Let James cook.
Once you go Flacco, you don't go backo.
Cook and Gibbs in my fantasy league, by the way. It has nothing to do with it.
And what's the rule? Nobody cares about your fantasy team, right? Right. That's the
Well,
rule.
there's somebody out there that does.
Somebody does. Somebody's like, yeah, me too, Chico. The stat you were referring to with James Cook, he's the fourth Buffalo player all time to record 200-plus scrimmage yards, a rushing touchdown, and a receiving touchdown in the same game. That's not going to happen every week, obviously. But if you can rely on him as a guy to carry a good portion of your offense, it unlocks everything else.
Here's what was surprising, too. I mean, we're talking about Buffalo's offense, Dallas's defense. Let's go the other side. Dak Prescott, I mean, he looked completely befuddled, it wasn't just, oh, yeah, hey, he's no longer in the MVP race. I mean, he looked terrible.
There was nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Great defensive game plan from a defensive coach who is back in charge of his defense, and they all came through. They played as a unit. They played really well as an 11-man group and took away all the throwing windows and everything that the Cowboys like to do. And it really helps more than anything when your offense puts together two drives that are super long.
Yeah.
And you basically don't have the football. They played keep away. They had two drives. 6:54 was the first touchdown drive. It was a 12-play drive. The next one was 4:44, an 11-play drive. The Cowboys went 11 plays, 61 yards for a field goal. They're down 14-3. And then the Bills follow that up with another 11-play, 76-yard that takes 5.5 minutes off the clock. They got to halftime with a massive advantage in time of possession. And what's the best way to keep an explosive offense from hurting you? Keep them off the field. That's what they did. At halftime, the time of possession difference was 18:31 to 11:29. It's a 7-minute difference for you math wizards.
And I
2
mean,
seconds.
it reminded me of Michigan versus Ohio State, unfortunately. Like, Michigan just saying, we're going to run the ball. We're going to Dallas had no answer.
It's one of the most deflating things in football is to
Take
not be
your
able to
soul,
get a
baby.
stop
That
and
will
not
take
be able
your
to get
soul.
the ball back when you're trailing.
All right, I'm going to say, what you mentioned the MVP. We're going to end with this. So I've been on a crusade. I feel this is a bit of a crusade that I'm on as far as the MVP. Normally, I get it. I understand that it's a quarterback-driven award. I understand that. But you know what? So Dak Prescott is now out. Okay, he's off the list. I
don't know, because it's just there's no other clear-cut favorite.
But, yeah, okay. Well, that's more to my point here in a second. Jalen Hurts.
Oh, he's definitely out.
Yeah, he's definitely out. Ran for 2 touchdowns, but, they've got
out.
their own issues. So, nothing against Brock Purdy. I he's having a great year.
Oh.
But if you're going to give it to a Niner, give it to Christian McCaffrey.
Okay, all right, I can get behind this.
Give it to Christian McCaffrey.
He's great, man. I mean, if he had scored that one touchdown, if he had scored, what was it, Jacksonville? They dominated, and they tried to get him a touchdown at the end of the game, and he didn't. He'd have, touchdowns in 21 straight games.
And I'm not, I want to be clear. I want to be very clear about this. I am not poo-pooing what Brock Purdy is doing. I hear some people go, well, he threw a 60-yard pass, 60-yard TD to Deebo Samuel, and it was only 7 air yards, and then he went the 53.
But he put it to him in the right spot for the catch.
Exactly. They still nobody said that about
The same
Brady.
people are going to credit Joe Flacco for putting in the right spot to Amari Cooper
Exactly.
for a touchdown.
So I am by no means, but I don't think Christian McCaffrey's ever won an MVP.
No, he has not, because it doesn't go to running backs, but
Right.
he's having a fantastic
So
season.
couldn't this – all I'm saying is this is one of those years. I've got no problem with the QB winning it because normally we have a QB just, well, this is a done deal, whether it's Mahomes, but you don't have that this year. And again, I'm not saying like Brock Purdy, if he wins it, I don't think it's going to be a travesty, but if we're going to have all of these things conspire, we're going to have all of these different things happen where quarterbacks are either hurt or they're not playing well or they're not meeting expectations that we had preseason, why not give it to Christian McCaffrey? It's not the end of the world. He's actually one of the best players in the game. It can be a non-quarterback.
It is no coincidence that the Browns found a way to win over the 49ers after McCaffrey left that game with an injury. He is the most important player on that team. I know he's not quarterback, but he is the guy that unlocks that offense and allows it to operate freely. He currently leads the league in carries at 244. Rush yards, 1,292. He's got 13 rushing touchdowns. He's averaging 5.3 yards per carry, and he's caught 57 passes for 509 yards and 7 touchdowns. Folks, that's 20 touchdowns total with 3 games to play. That's I think it's over 300 touches. I can't disagree with any of this. I think you're making a fantastic point.
I'd like to, and again, we'll see how it ends up, and how these quarterbacks do in these games.
This is if there is a year for a non-quarterback to win it, it's this year.
Yeah,
and you can thank the Bills for that.
By the way, every team has had a dip. I think it's interesting, but you look at San Francisco right now; they had theirs. It also coincided with Debo being out, with Trent Williams being out. They're back in. McCaffrey is doing his thing. Purdy. How considerable is the drop from the San Francisco 49ers to the next best team in the league? Not NFC, just in the league.
Decently. I think that right now there's only one team I feel like if I had to put my life on the line, I would say the Niners are going to the Super Bowl. They have to stay healthy, and they only have a 1-game lead atop the NFC. They're right in front of Dallas and Detroit. Detroit, I think, has got some fraudulent parts to them. Dallas, we saw what happened to them in Buffalo. Philly's in a tough spot right now. And then everybody else, the NFC side, Tampa Bay, Minnesota, the Rams. I mean, it's gross. Yeah. And then on the AFC side, it's Baltimore, who we've already talked about as being a beatable team, in Miami, who blew a 2-touchdown lead in the final 4.5 minutes in a Monday night game against Tennessee. Like, there's one team right now that I think can go out there, exert their will on you, impose their will on you, dominate a game, and make you feel it for 3 days after, and that's the San Francisco 49ers.
Yep, absolutely agree. All right, that's going to do it for Week 16 of the Bold Bald Breakdown. We do this each and every Tuesday. We will be back next week, day after Christmas. Before I misspeak, you'll be in town, and we'll be able to...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's the holiday season.
I'll bring your stocking. It'll be filled with...
My grandma actually just gave me my old stocking from her house yesterday.
Really?
Sunday.
Still does it say Nikki? Does it say Shooky?
Nikki? Oh, I hate it when anybody puts a Y at the end of my name.
Is it Nicholas?
No, it's just Nick.
Just Nick.
Yeah.
All right.
And it just says Nick on the stocking because it's accurate.
Old Saint
Still
Nick.
in pristine condition, too.
Old Saint Nick. There he is. All right. So the Browns get it done against the Bears. Can they do it against the Houston Texans on the road? C.J. Stroud, Case Keenum, we don't know. But all we know is this Browns team continues to find a way to get it done, even when there's no way. You don't have the healthy bodies. They play poorly for 3 quarters. Joe Flacco just wait a second, and they do it again. Can they do it again this week? Getting closer and closer to wrapping up a playoff spot. 3 games to go. We'll do it again on Tuesday. Until then, Nick Shook, great job as always. Follow him. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Twitter, @the Nick Shook. Twitch, the Nick Shook. Instagram, Nick Shook NFL. NFL.com/Shook. And
Around the NFL show, which our buddy John down the hall loves here at the airport.
Yes,
he loves
find that on YouTube and all your favorite podcast platforms, and the Gridiron Podcast, which we'll be probably recording a new episode this week, also on your favorite platforms. Just remember to keep the brackets around iron in Gridiron.
As Estelle Costanza said to George Costanza, why can't you be more like Lloyd Braun? Why can't you be more like Maurice Jones-Drew? I'm giving you something to strive for.
I'm not a UCLA running back legend. I didn't play for the Jaguars and the
You're
Raiders.
bigger than 5'6".
I am, but I don't like to debate everyone fiercely on literally everything in a newsroom like MJD does. Primarily because I don't like to talk to people as much as others.
1 hour down, and we'll be back with one more hour to go here on the Chico Borman Show. Plenty more Browns talk as they get ready for the Houston Texans and the Cavaliers with another win last night. And one guy that we kind of have forgotten about, and when we do talk about him, usually folks, well, they like to trash him. We'll talk about that before the hour is out as well. Chico Borman Show, more to come right here on the Big Play Sports Network. All righty, welcome back. It is the Chico Borman Show as we roll along on this Tuesday, and we are with you until 2 o'clock. We do it Monday through Friday here on the Big Play Sports Network. You can follow us on Twitter at Chico Show CLE. Also jump over to YouTube and type in the Chico Borman Show. For those of you not subscribed yet, you can do that now, and we appreciate it. Also available wherever you get your podcasts. Spotify, Apple, doesn't matter. And this is just a great, great time to be alive. Great time to be a Browns fan. And we have not said that very often over the years, certainly since they've come back into the league. There have not been many days, many times on December the 19th. Today is December the 19th, kids. And we're talking about the Browns being oh so close to clinching a playoff spot. You like their chances right now. 9-5, 3 games to go. Houston is no gimme. Look, none of them are gimmies. Okay, well, I think we've established that. None of them are gimmies. The Jets are a mess right now. That will follow the Houston game. The Bengals are just continuing to hang in there with Jake Browning. And as Jake Browning said, shouldn't have bleeping traded me. Nobody crosses Jake Browning. But this is just a great feeling, and do not take it for granted. All right. Yeah, I think one of the things, and we kind of, it was a common theme, and one that Nick and I hit it on quite a bit today, and that is Joe Flacco showing us another version. And I think to some, and I can see where nationally there are some out there that are like, oh my God, they're really overdoing this Flacco stuff over there in Cleveland. And that's okay. That's okay. I always try to think, like, if the roles were reversed, would I be saying the same thing about, if it was Cincinnati? I mean, if Cincinnati was the one that with Joe Flacco right now and he was doing what he's doing, would we be like, whatever? I don't know. But all I know is we have Joe Flacco. All I know is what he did in the fourth quarter. I'm going to go so far as to say even the starters in this game today, or in the NFL today, not many are capable of doing what he did. That doesn't mean that he's better than any of these guys. I mean, he's not. But there are certain qualities that Joe Flacco possesses that, let's be frank, let's be honest about it, other quarterbacks the Browns have had and do have right now on the roster haven't necessarily displayed. Now, it's not to say, because I'm not looking to start some, war with you people here over Deshaun. Deshaun Watson is a great quarterback. How great remains to be determined, because I don't know how consistently great he can be. Okay? But the idea, and Nick said this earlier, and I don't disagree with him, that, if that would have been Watson down 17-7, would he have had the confidence? Would they have had the confidence? Would we have all had the confidence that they could come back? And honestly, I didn't have even the confidence in Joe Flacco. Down 17-7, I thought, you know what? This is going to be the week. We knew it was coming. We talked to our buddy Dan Lobby on Friday from Cleveland.com, and he came out and said, I just have a feeling that this is going to be a game that bites him. And like I said, it's 17-7. You saw the Bears get up by 10. You saw Montez Sweat having his way in the backfield, and he thought, this is going to be awfully difficult. But then Joe Flacco did something that not many guys in the league can do. And it has nothing to do with, well, I shouldn't say that, because the pass to Amari Cooper, that thing is becoming like a something of a legend. That pass to Cooper, where all I can say is when they do it with the next gen stats, it's like those guys move around, the little dots move around like the ghosts in Pac-Man. Dating myself, but the ghosts in Pac-Man, they're moving all around it. The window that Flacco has to get it into Amari Cooper is so minuscule and has to be so timed just right. And they did it. It's amazing.
Chico, the Browns put out the end zone field view, right, from behind the end zone.
Yeah.
And the way that the crowd just erupted after he made that catch, I swear to you, I probably watched it like 20 or 30 times. It was just so amazing to hear that reaction, and what an incredible play. Yeah. And yeah, to your point, that was an absolutely elite dart from Flacco.
And it's one that if you don't have confidence, or I should say, if you're doubting yourself because of the 3 quarters that you played before, you're not making that throw. You're hesitate. Or if you do make that throw, you hesitated just enough because you had just enough doubt to say, oh, man, should I or shouldn't I? And in the National Football League, that's enough for a pick to happen. That's at the very least enough for the ball to fall incomplete. And you're lucky if that's the case. But that's what is so amazing about this is, like I said, to liken it to that closer role in baseball, the defensive back in football. You've got to be able to flush it. And here's a guy who, I mean, he didn't mince any words. He's like, for 3 quarters, I was pretty bad. But I also knew that, hey, we're still in this game. This is a 10-point game. I've been in enough of these. Let's go. And That's just that you can't quantify that sort of intangible in a quarterback that I don't care if he's 38, 28, 58. If you have it, not everybody does. And it came up big in that game against Chicago.
And we heard Flacco admit after the game that like there were points where he kind of felt like he wanted to crawl under a hole and hide away from the team.
If not from Montez Sweat.
Right. But it speaks to his poise that he was able to shake that off.
Yeah.
And that is something that out of a 38-year-old vet, I feel like it's invaluable to your point, Chico.
I do think that they're going to, and I think they're going to win on Sunday. I do. Even if it is C.J. Stroud there. I think the lack of, now if Tank Dell is healthy, if Nico Collins is healthy, I think that puts a lot more pressure on a defense that has been, obviously they are themselves. Now their secondaries, corners are okay as far as health-wise, as long as we didn't have anything happen today to Denzel. But, safeties, you're still working those guys in. Make no mistake, if it's C.J. Stroud, he's going to test those guys. He's going to test the safeties. He's going to there's going to be a heavy dose of probably Dalton Schultz, I would imagine. But I feel like now the Browns and Flacco, you're going to be playing in a better weather environment. I think they have I think they get off to a decent start. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I said 21-14, but I think they're in control for much of this game. If it's Case Keenum, maybe that score is a little different. Maybe they can win by a wider margin. And I think they will, because I think now turnovers come into play a little bit more. But I just, at this point, and it's okay to say it, and it's okay to say it even beyond the regular season. Like, why not? They've done it to this point to have 9 wins. Remember when we were saying, like, and it seems like a lifetime ago, like, wow, can you imagine the Browns? I'm going to give you all these names, and at the time it was like 3 or 4. It was Deshaun, it was Nick Chubb, it was Jack Conklin, and Jed Wills. And you'd go, but here they are. They're above 500. They're above 500. My God, I mean, that's just amazing. I know it's above 500. We shouldn't be celebrating, but they're above 500 with all of these injuries. Now they're 9-5. And I mean, it is all about. This is where, the cliches, you can throw those right out the window because they are legit. And that's, let's face it, cliches become cliches because they get said so much over the years that there is some truth to them. Do people overuse them? Absolutely. But they have a shred of truth to them for teams like the Cleveland Browns. When you talk about one game at a time, when you talk about next man up, when you talk about, hey, we'll find a way, we're 1-0. Well, the Browns are they are living proof of it this year. They are living proof of it week to week. And you just say, well, okay, on paper it doesn't look real good. They've got all these injuries and the offensive line, but you know what? They're just going to find a way. And in a league right now where I think the only thing, San Francisco, you know what you're getting. Baltimore, you know what you're getting, but Baltimore is still beatable. Like, I look at San Francisco when they're humming with Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey. When those guys are all healthy, they're awfully tough to beat. And right now, they're a great team, but they also have everybody healthy, and they're a tough team to beat. Baltimore's beatable. And by no means am I saying, like, oh, my gosh, yeah, no problem. Because it's still Lamar Jackson. They are running the ball. It seems like Baltimore, and this is why they have that culture. It seems like Baltimore, just when you think certain areas of their squad, either running the football or playing defense, is going to suffer because of injuries, it doesn't happen. I mean, they still, on Sunday night, ran for over 200 yards. They've run for over 100 yards in every game this year, and that's with J.K. being out. Keaton Mitchell just went down. It's not like they have – I mean, look, Gus Edwards is a nice piece, but, as far as explosiveness, they don't really have that. But you do have Lamar Jackson. And I do think I got to reiterate this. The idea that we're talking about this laundry list of QBs who are out, and the Browns with 3 of them, this laundry list of QBs that are out, and yet the guy who's standing, you want to talk about irony, still standing in late December is Lamar Jackson. Go figure. That tells you all you need to know about this season of the National Football League. All right, I want to spend a little bit of time before we get to fair or foul to end the show. I want to talk some hoops. Cavaliers win last night. They do so in overtime. It's going to be ugly. I think we talked about this yesterday. It's not going to be a pretty thing, particularly with Darius Garland and Evan Mobley out for a length of time. If you did not hear, Darius Garland has a broken jaw. Evan Mobley had that knee scoped, and he's going to be out for probably a month, maybe beyond that. You still have talent on this team. You still have Donovan Mitchell, who put up a big number last night. But one guy that I know he always draws the ire of fans. And I can't tell if it's because he was drafted so high that the expectations are always so high for him. And there's nothing wrong. I don't blame the fans for that. When you get a guy that's drafted, what was Isaac Okoro drafted? 5th?
Yeah.
I believe that draft that he went. Okay, 5th. Fans, we need more offensively. And let me just say this. You still, and J.B. Bickerstaff has said this, Chris Fedor has said it, covering them, and anybody that follows the Cavs knows, when push comes to shove, they are always going to be a defensive team at their core. That doesn't mean they've got issues offensively. They sure as hell have issues now offensively with Darius and Evan out. But you still got to play defense. And if you watched any of that game last night, Isaac Okoro played his ass off last night. Isaac Okoro, there's certain guys where, like, when they play well, it's contagious. And Okoro is one of those guys. And that's a quality I love about him. And not every player has that quality. Not every, even superstars. Some superstars can go off for great lines every night, but around them, are other guys playing well? Are they contagious? No. Isaac Okoro, who's never going to, wow you with his numbers, is contagious. Isaac Okoro, Donovan Mitchell said it last night, that everybody focuses, I think as fans, we focus on Okoro from beyond the arc, and, he's got to be better from 3, and he does. I won't dispute that. But Donovan Mitchell said, where we really get the most out of Isaac Okoro offensively? Him taking teams off the dribble, taking his man off the dribble, because he's got great quickness. That's what makes him a great defender. He's got great quickness, driving to the hole, and if he doesn't make it, he's getting fouled, and he's knocking down free throws. And you saw all of that last night. Now, Okoro's not going to be able to just, no Darius, no problem, no Mobley, no problem, we've got Okoro. But I'm telling you, during this period, you're going to need guys that normally I think we just kind of look at and go, they're just, no, Isaac Okoro's a big piece. And Isaac Okoro is a guy that, whether it's because he was drafted 5th overall, whether it's, he's had his struggles offensively and shooting the basketball, I don't know. I like this guy. I've always liked this guy. I know that there have been talks about the trade deadline. By the way, here's the other thing. By the time the trade deadline hits, Darius Garland and Evan Mobley probably won't be back. And if so, it'll be like it's highly doubtful they'll be back before the trade deadline. So if the Cavs are going to make any deal, or if teams are going to be calling the Cavs, it will be with those two guys still either injured or just getting back from injury, which makes it even more fascinating. But, I said let's wait till after this homestand. I had no idea when I said that Mobley and Darius Garland were going down, but they have won 2 straight ball games. You've got Utah, old buddy Colin Sexton tomorrow. That won't be easy. But, let's see how they do. Let's see how they they regroup. And I think they have. And I think JB has probably got a message across that, guys, we're not the same team we were without those guys. But you know what? Maybe there's a blessing in disguise here. Maybe there's a silver lining that we now do things that we wouldn't do if Darius and Mobley were healthy. And one last thing I want to emphasize before we get ready for fair or foul. One last thing I want to emphasize. It is still very early in the season, okay? And like any sport, we're talking about it with the NFL right now. Baseball, you see it. Team gets hot at the right time, and they go and who knows. Same thing. The Cavaliers, let's say they get Mobley and Garland back healthy. They've been able to work on some things that have made them a much better fundamental team or a much more reliable team, things that can travel, great defense, great communication. And then they get those guys back. And then let's say at the end of the year, they're playing their best basketball. This will be a memory. Now, again, that still has to happen. But I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, whereas I get the feeling a lot of Cavs fans feel like there's no way that can happen. I don't know. Maybe it's blind faith. I do believe in JB Bickerstaff. I do believe that Mitchell and Garland can work together, although I admit that it's going to be harder now with this injury to Garland. I believe the Cavs can be a great defensive team, are a great defensive team, but is it going to be tougher without Evan Mobley? Well, obviously. You're talking about one of the best shot blockers paired with Jared Allen in the game. But it's a long season. There are things there's things that they can take away during this period that can make them a much better all-around basketball team. Will they do it? We'll find out. We'll take a break. We'll come back, wrap it up with Fair or Foul. Chico Borman Show, more to come right here on the Big Play Sports Network. righty, welcome back. Chico Borman Show on this Tuesday, and the Big Play Network presented by Tipico Sportsbook. The Tipico Sportsbook app has your traditional bets like the money line, spread, and point totals, but also lock-in player props. Check out our Big Play boosts every single week to back your favorite Cleveland teams and athletes with the best odds in Ohio. Get in on the action. Load up for football season using promo code BIGPLAY100. You'll get $100 of bets on us. Just bet $25. We'll then give you $100 in bet credits. Bet with the Big Play crew all season long with Tipico Sportsbook. It is time for another version of Fair or Foul.
Hey, Chico. So I want to kick things off with the NFL. So Jalen Hurts, last night after the Eagles fell on Monday Night Football, kind of put his team on blast in his post-game press conference when he said that he doesn't think the team is committed enough. And when he was asked to further elaborate, he said, quote, commitment? I don't have a dictionary on me now. Just commitment. Do you think that his comments, and in some ways it could be a wake-up call to the team, but fair or foul, well, do you find his comments fair or foul, I suppose, putting kind of more, for lack of a better term, throwing the team under the bus?
Okay, I'm going to disagree that it's throwing him under the bus. I think he is. I think what you said at the beginning, so I'm going to go foul on that. I think what you said at the beginning about a wake-up call, I think that's what he's trying to do. Because there are things right now with that Philadelphia team, and some of it's Jalen. I don't want to say it's, he's immune to any of this criticism because he's struggled as well. But, like, the offensive line, which has been incredibly brilliant over the last couple of seasons, has not been great of late. Bradbury, again, I go back to it. I know it happens every now and then, but you're down 17-13. James Bradbury's a good corner. You get down 17-13, and how do you let a guy, and I know it's your boy, Jackson Smith-Njigba, but how the hell do you let a guy get behind you when they have to score? It's just that kind of stuff. Those mental errors can't happen. He's the leader of the team. He's going to take a lot of the credit. Sometimes it's not justified. He's also going to take a lot of the blame. Also not justified. But I think being the leader, you're expected to say things like this. And I think Jalen Hurts is a good leader. I think this is Jalen Hurts trying to get his team rallied because right now there's just, it's like Kansas City. There's just something off. But I think with Philly, it's more like, what it is with KC. With Philly, it's just very much up in the air. Like, what's going on with these guys? Nobody really knows.
And also one last thing I want to ask you about Philly before we move on here on Fair or Foul today, Chico. Jason Kelce was penalized for advancing the ball forward before an attempted tush push. Now, we've seen officiating, it's been mixed because it feels like they're letting a lot more calls go in terms of like pass interference and whatnot, and holding, of course, with Myles Garrett. But at the same time, you've seen far more offensive offsides calls made from referees this season than compared to previous seasons. And also now, Jason Kelce and the NFL Twitter detectives have uncovered plenty of evidence of Jason Kelce doing this throughout his career. So for him to finally be flagged on this, fair or foul, Chico, you think this is something that officiating is going to crack down on?
Well, okay. Fair. If it's do I think the officiating is going to crack down on it? Absolutely fair. They will. Here's the thing. We already know that the league isn't real fond of the tush push to begin with. I personally don't think they should ban it. I think it's one of those, like, they've found a way to perfect it. They're not doing anything now, again, with the ball movement and all that stuff. But as far as like getting low and it's any team can do it. They've perfected it. So if you get lower and you're stronger and you're able to get that tush push, then go ahead and do it. But I'm going to say fair because I think the league has already made it very, very clear that they don't like the play. So are they going to start looking for ways to flag them on it? Yeah, and that'll include Jason Kelce.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Chico. All right, well, I wanted to go to one of the Eagles' divisional foes in the New York Giants and their quarterback, Tommy DeVito. Yes, exactly. He had booked an appearance for, basically, from what I understand, like a mom and pop pizza shop to appear for $10,000. And then after he kind of balled out, not this past Sunday, but last Sunday,
Right.
he upped his appearance fee by double, so from $10K to $20K. You think DeVito letting it get to his head a little bit is fair or foul?
Well, okay.
And his agent probably had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, that's what I was that's where I was going with it. Now, obviously, and I always say this, at the end of the day, the agent is employed by the player, not the other way around. But a lot of times the agent handles all this stuff. And I've looked into this a little bit. It's called Caniglio's Old Fashioned Pizzeria. And they had announced a deal on social media that they would no longer be hosting. They were going to host him today. But after last week's appearance, or after last week's game, they said, no, it's not going to be 10,000. It's going to be 20,000. Now, what she is saying is that they hadn't signed I should say his agent is saying, we hadn't signed a contract, so nothing was definitive. But then the agent also said, well, there weren't even any terms discussed to begin with. Well, then Mama Caniglio, if that's her name, Mama Caniglio's like, no, and she has the screenshot from a text message that says, yeah, that looks good, that's fine. So it looks like, yeah, he's trying to get a cash grab. It's wrong. I mean, you can't play up the Tommy Cutlets and the Tommy DeVito and the jersey. You can't play that up and then and again, if nothing had been discussed and it was just, hey, you know what do you think's the going rate? $20,000. Oh, that's a little steep. I can't do it. Okay, well, fine. That's their going fee. But you can't. If they said $10,000 and they agreed on it, but nothing was signed yet, well, then it looks like, oh, well, hey, so you had a good game. Now you're doubling it. Now karma. I think his agent's a bit of a goof. I think his agent is trying to make his name for himself as much as Tommy is. So yeah, totally foul, bad look. And if you're trying to get the hometown feel, and you massively failed. So bad on the agent.
Yeah, I am in concurrent that it's an awful look. I think that's not not the look of the man of the people that he was played out to be. So
hey,
we'll see how he bounces back from this one with future appearances if they do happen to happen.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to ask you. So you mentioned Christian McCaffrey making your case, and Shook laid out some great points as well in terms of how he's the key to unlocking that offense. Well, the Niners are going to be involved in a great matchup on Monday Night Football here this coming week, as they will be playing host
Christmas night. Yep.
Yeah, they will be playing host to the Baltimore Ravens. 3 games on Monday, by the way, which I am excited for.
Yep.
With that, I want to ask you, Chico, fair or foul, this Ravens-Niners matchup will be pivotal in determining this year's NFL MVP.
Good question. I will say, I'm going to say fair, even though I really feel like I'm on a crusade with McCaffrey, and not even just McCaffrey. Before Tyreek Hill got hurt, and now he's out. But I mean, I was on it. Like, it doesn't always have to be a quarterback-driven award. I realize that most years, if not every year, it's going to be a quarterback-driven award because you have somebody deserving of it. I just feel like they're kind of falling off right now. Like Jalen Hurts, we talked about him. He's gone. I mean, he's no longer, I think, in the hunt. Dak Prescott, he can't play like he did against Buffalo. I don't care if people say, well, how he finishes the season. He was terrible in that game. So now all of a sudden, like, it's wide open. And, yeah, I totally get that Brock Purdy and Lamar Jackson, it kind of feels like the Heisman, right? Like Bo Nix and Michael Penix and even though Jaden Daniels won. But you say, well, the winner of this game and if this quarterback, that's what this feels like. So I'm going to say fair in that I think if one of these guys really balls out, then I think they probably will win it. But I don't think that should be the end-all, be-all. So, I mean, I'll go fair because I think that's how the voting will go. But this is – and take nothing away from Brock Purdy. Hell, I've gone on record as saying, even as a Ravens hater, being a Browns guy through and through, that I love Lamar Jackson. But, my God, Christian McCaffrey has 20 touchdowns with 3 games remaining. He's the engine that makes that go. Purdy has had a great year. And I'm not into this game manager. He's a great quarterback on a great team. But, my God, Christian McCaffrey's unreal. The guy deserves an MVP before it's all said and done.
Yeah, and I think Shook made a great point, too, about you saw, like, the tides turn in that Browns-49ers matchup as soon as McCaffrey left the game.
Yeah.
How big of an impact it was not having him in that offense.
Yep.
Speaking of other interesting matchups on this week's NFL slate, I found this one to be pretty fascinating. The Cowboys will be playing the Dolphins, Chico. The Dallas Cowboys are 1-3 versus teams above 500, and they're also 9-1 against teams 500 or below. Meanwhile, the Dolphins are 0-3 versus teams above 500, while being 10-1 versus teams 500 or below. Fair or foul, you will consider the winner of this matchup to not be a fraud.
Foul. Only because, especially in Dallas's case, Dallas has been this has been a knock on Dallas for more than just this year. So, I mean, Miami, I'll go on record as saying, like everybody else, like I think they're kind of a paper champion. I think they're a dangerous team getting in, and they have a great offense. But as soon as they have to go somewhere beyond South Beach and they have to play a great team, I think they go down. Dallas, I feel like this has been a knock with them, and I don't understand it. I quite frankly, I don't understand it because they are a very balanced football team. But, like, how do you play that poorly on both sides of the ball? Like, they didn't just Dak Prescott couldn't find anybody open. He looked very hesitant, and credit Buffalo. I don't want to, leave out Buffalo. They were confusing the hell out of them with their cover one looks and all that BS. But, like, on both sides of the ball, they just looked lost. So I get the feeling, maybe it's because Dallas is more in the news all the time. This is more of a thing with Dallas than it is Miami. So I'm gonna go foul on that.
Yeah, and to your point, it ultimately depends, like, the specifics of what happens, how it plays out.
Yeah.
I feel like Dallas winning this game would be massive. Miami losing this game would be even more of a shock to me because I really do view them as a legitimate contender here in the AFC playoffs.
Do you really?
Yeah, I think that offense, when it's humming, it's as dangerous as it gets.
But see, I mean, they haven't beat a team over 500.
I know, but this would be a huge one, I think. Now, how much does it mean relatively compared to their one big win on the season? So they haven't beat anyone over 500.
No.
So
yeah, they haven't beat. And the other thing is, like, and I know it's easy to say, like, well, hey, nobody thought they'd do well without Tyreek Hill, but the Jets they've mailed it in. That locker room's done. They're gone. They're already on vacation making tea times. So I don't have a problem with Miami. I kind of wouldn't mind. I'd like to see Tua do well, but I'm sorry, man. They've lost a lot of games against teams that are above 500, and that's pretty much what you got to do in the playoffs is win those games.
Yeah, I guess the question is, like, how much stock do you really put in whoever comes out of this matchup victorious? And probably not as much, but it's interesting, and I want to see how that one plays out,
I
Chico.
would probably put more stock in Dallas, believe it or not. But
Yeah.
I think as far as because I think they're better on both sides of the ball. But Dallas, there's just something with them. McCarthy even. And he's done very well this year, rebounding, whatever. But it just feels like this is something hanging over their heads in Big D. I can't describe it.
And you know what? We've heard Eric Casillas talk about it too. How for 25 years he's been betting against the Dallas Cowboys, and for 25 years it has never failed him. So yes. I think that's an important point to note, is just that continued letdown for America's team, as some like to refer to them.
Yep.
Well, my final one on today's edition of Fair or Foul. It's been all NFL today, Chico.
That's all right.
I want to finish this one off asking you about Chris Holtmann, because we touched on it briefly yesterday. Ohio State with a huge win against UCLA. And it feels like one of the biggest characteristics that I've noticed with Chris Holtman's Ohio State basketball teams is the hot start, the cold finish. Fair or foul, Chico, do you believe that this year could be different for the tenure under one Chris Holtman?
Until he proves otherwise, foul. I mean, I want to believe otherwise. I don't want him going anywhere. I don't think he's been a horrible coach, but even late in the season, late in games, they didn't shoot well from three. That they did beat UCLA, but both teams, I think they combined for
It was a bad night from the perimeter. Ohio State did not make a single three-point shot until the final couple minutes.
Yeah.
It was a dagger and a great shot, but not till the end.
And I mean, they won, they beat UCLA, so I don't want to discredit that. But is that something that we've seen? Like when you look at kind of characteristics of a team, an Ohio State team under Chris Holtman that have failed, it's usually they start to get out-rebounded late in the season. They don't defend the three really well, and they don't make many threes very well. So it's just too early. I hope this is different. I actually like how this team is constructed. I like Bruce Thornton. Roddy Gale's a nice. I like him. But ultimately, it's great here in December. What are you going to be doing in February? What are you going to be doing, obviously, in March? Hopefully you get in to that tourney. Is it going to be another one and done? Is it going to be another second round? Sooner or later, they got to start making a run. It's not even Final Four. This isn't about Chris Holtman has to win a national championship. But you got to start at least knocking on doors of the Elite Eight. Maybe, God forbid, even a Final Four. But Sweet 16, Elite Eight, come on, man. I mean, you got to start producing here.
Yeah, and I do like this young squad. I feel like there's a lot of promising pieces that Holtman has to work with. You mentioned Thornton and Gale, but also the veteran presence of Zed Key.
Yeah.
Battle was the one who hit that huge three at the end against UCLA. Yep. Final question here, just in regards to that. Do you think that Holtman is on the hot seat this year? Is there potential that he could legitimately lose his title after the season?
I'm going to say foul, but again, I don't what does it look like? I mean, do they completely if they
the wheels have come off?
Yeah, if the wheels come off, they barely somehow squeak into the tournament and they get out they're a heavy favorite and they get ousted. I think it's one thing I keep going back to though with Ohio State, whether it's football or basketball, is that Gene Smith is out. Gene Smith's retiring. So I don't know. You don't know what those relationships are like. You don't know. Who knows?
Not going to be that same level of loyalty when you bring in a new face.
Or maybe somebody does actually believe. I mean, you don't know. So I think that's even adding more intrigue to the Holtman situation, any situation right now with Ohio State in the athletic department. So, all right, that is Fair Foul on this Tuesday. Good stuff, Bohm. Thanks to Nick Shook. Again, another great round. Week 16 of the Bold Bald Breakdown. And we're getting ready for the Browns taking on Houston on the road. And yes, the Browns are 9-5. 9-5 as they get set to take on the Texans on the road, followed by the Jets at home and then the Bengals on the road. But they just keep finding a way. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. Until then, make it a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody, for all of us here at Big Play Sports. See ya.